Well, hello, welcome back to Tale 3 Cabins. Can this be it? Can this finally be the holy grail of power stations? Is this going to be able to power my high wattage devices that I have in my pole barn, like a table saw or compressor or shop vac? And can this make that elusive cup of coffee in my RV when we're out boondocking or off grid? Also, can I get the microwave to work too? And would it be possible to charge our electric plug-in hybrid? So why don't you stick around and we'll check all this stuff out and find out for ourselves and see if this is going to solve a lot of my needs. Alright, this is the Vanpowers Super Pro 2000. It's a 2000 watt inverter. It has a capacity of 2096 watt hours. And it's the biggest power station I've ever had. It's probably almost 4 times bigger when you talk capacity and inverter strength compared to some of the other ones that I've reviewed and that I use around our pole barn and when we've been out RVing, and probably just a multitude of uses that you've seen within the last year anyways. So this has a 2000 watt AC inverter, pure sine wave. There are 6 outlets on the side here, which are in several different configurations if you notice. And if you first look at it at a glance, you think, man, that doesn't look very symmetrical. But when you start thinking about all these types of adapters that you have, it does make sense when you have different size adapters that fit into the plugs different ways. So after seeing this and thinking about it for a few seconds and then actually testing it out with some of my adapters, it's pretty ingenuitive. Let's just go over this power station, some of the features that it has, and the specifications. Up front, this is probably one of the largest displays that I've ever seen when it comes to a power station. It's multicolored, gives you a lot of information. It tells you a lot of your BMS protection stuff in here. It'll give you warnings if it's too cold, if it's too hot. It'll shut this thing down if it's too cold, so it gives you a lot of protection on the battery. Protection from overcharging, overheating. It also has Wi-Fi, which is becoming more and more common with a lot of these power stations. One of the previous ones I did have Wi-Fi. It's nice to have a little app on here, and you can control all the functions of this power stations, turn outlets on and off, turn DC outlets on and off, turn a light on and off if you want to, adjust the brightness, and you can also adjust the wattage of your input coming in. So I mentioned that you have the 6 AC outlets on the side with a 2000 watt pure sine inverter. It's a peak 4000 watts, and then if you use amp up mode in the app that you can download with this, you can amp this up to get 3000 watts of power for things that don't really have a compressor or don't have like a screen or a computer in it. So you could use some higher wattage appliances and it's not going to shut this thing down up to 3000 watts. Up front you can see that there are some USB ports. These are USB-C ports, and there are no USB-A ports, but it does come with 2 USB-A adapters that you just plug in and use those if you need the USB-A type adapters. It's kind of like an Apple thing. When Apple first started taking things out of their Macs, like they were the first ones to take the CD drive out. And everybody was up in arms that there's no CD drive on this computer, and now it's pretty much standard that most computers do not come with a CD drive. This is the wave of the future. But you have 2 here that are 100 watts, and then you have 2 20 watt connectors. You have 3 55 21 barrel connectors, and those have a capacity of 136 watts. On this side you have your inputs. On the very left you have an overload reset switch. Then you have your solar connection, which you could put 600 watts of solar up to 60 volts. Over here is the AC input where you can charge this thing up to 1800 watts. 1800 watts will charge this to 80% in 1 hour, and you could pretty much have this thing charged or topped off in an hour and a half. When I first took this out of the box, it was at 0%. In fact, it wouldn't even turn on. So I was leery because I knew this was 1800 watts and I didn't know if that was the default for charging. I had in my pole barn and the power supply there, I was using some extension cords, and I think it was just way too long from the house to the pole barn to try to plug this thing in, especially if it was going to be asking for 1800 watts right off the bat. Pretty much thought I was going to trip a breaker. So I ended up using one of my other power stations and just charging it to a couple percent. What I did is I got the app downloaded and I paired this with the app so I could go into the controls and then reduce this input down to something a little bit more manageable for the pole barn, and I brought it down to about 500 watts so the demand wouldn't be so high. And I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'm usually in no rush to charge these things. If you're in a pinch and you're going on a trip, or if you know a big storm's coming and maybe this is up to full capacity and you're leery that the power might be going out, well then yeah, you could bump this back up to 1800 watts, charge it up really quick, and you'd be prepared for whatever situation you're going to need. And then there is a ground screw here, and we're going to test this out a little bit too. I'm going to try to charge this with my car, but I'm probably going to have to ground this screw out because the car charger is very finicky. If there's the slightest thing wrong with your outlet, if it doesn't have good ground, it will not charge the car and it won't do anything with it. But that's your inputs here on the side. Another unique thing about the AC cord here is that you can get a special cord that has MC4 connectors, and you can hook this up to an array of up to 1800 watts of solar and plug that in this port here. And where that might come into play is, let's say I do want to charge my vehicle with this, and if I have the solar panels available, I could hook this thing up, start charging my car, and if it's a decent sunny day, it's either going to be a wash on the power or I'll slightly charge this. I have some solar panels that are in the pole barn and by the shed. There's a couple on top of the roof of this RV. And there's a lot of times in the summertime I'm thinking, man, all these panels are sitting here and the sun's out and just that power is going to waste. So this might be something for me to look into. I'm going to test it out and see if we could charge the car off of this first, and then maybe in the future, if I get a little bit bigger array, we could charge the car in the daytime and save a little bit on our electric bill. Okay, so while we're here in the RV, why don't we see if we can make that elusive cup of coffee and do a few other things while we're here, and then we'll go to the pole barn and do some things, and then we'll try the car out. But when we're out boondocking in our RV and we're off grid, a lot of places you can use a generator, but you can only use it during certain hours. And a lot of times it may be like after 10 o'clock in the morning, then you got to shut it down by 6 o'clock in the evening. So if you get up and you want to go out for the day and you want to get a cup of coffee, or fill up your thermos, or use the microwave, you really can't start the generator. And our inverter in our RV is only 1,000 watts, so that doesn't get us close to making that cup of coffee. That's always been a little bit drawback when we're out camping. So let's see if we get our coffee maker on here and see how it does. All right, right now it's just pumping water into the chamber to be heated up. We're using about 6 watts. One thing we thought about this coffee maker is that we thought getting a smaller Keurig maybe would use less watts, but it uses the same amount of watts as a larger Keurig. It uses around 1,500 watts. It was a disappointment when we got it in here and we know we couldn't use it with our 1,000 watt inverter. So right now it's saying it's outputting about 1,170 watts. The fan is clicked on a little bit here. Normally it takes about 2 minutes to heat up the water before it starts to dispense into my travel mode. So it did it with no problem. With these RV microwaves, you know that it's all encased in there. I don't know where it's plugged into. I wouldn't be able to find a plug very easy, and it may not even have a plug. It might be directly wired into something. I also probably don't want to have this thing to lug around and keep it inside when it's tight quarters and we got Karen and I and the dog in here and all our gear. Even if I put this on the floor, it might still be a little bit in the way. But if we took it outside, put it in my truck, and then I plug it in like I would normally plug in our RV to a shoreline, let's see if we could still make coffee, and let's see if we get that microwave to work. Okay, so I got the camera outside. I'm back inside here. I can see that my microwave is flashing, which is good. I shut off all the things that I wouldn't be normally needing with the RV to make this cup of coffee. So if I didn't want to have this power station in here, I could leave it on my truck, hook it up to the shoreline. A few things you want to consider. You want to turn off your converter because that power station is going to want to charge my RV battery if the converter's on. And then I shut off a few other things just in case. I shut off the water heater, the fireplace, and the AC. And right now all my outlets should be hot. So let's see if we can make another cup of coffee. So far so good. I look forward to our next camping trip, and I'm going to be bringing a few more K-Cup containers with me. Okay, I put some a cup of water inside the microwave. I set it for 1 minute, and we are rolling right now. Let's go outside and let's just see how many watts we got on the power station. That's good to know that I don't even have to bring the power station in here. I just have to make sure I'm conserving some of my power, not having some other things running right now. But I can do the microwave and I can make that cup of coffee without using the generator and just without having to lug the power station inside here and then taking it back out, I could leave it in my truck and just go that route. So that can open up a lot of different breakfast options for you in the morning, especially if you don't have a gas stove and you want to turn on a hot plate, use the microwave, stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy that worked out. Just for the heck of it, let's see if we can turn the fireplace on. Oh, I gotta hit the breaker. There's the fireplace. Some warm air coming out right around 1200, and it says it would do this for about 2.1 hours. In a pinch, if you wanted to take the chill out of the air in here and just use the fireplace instead of using some of your propane, and if you have the power to spare on your power station, this is also a good option if your RV has a little fireplace like this in there, or a space heater. Now, unfortunately, it's a little chilly this time of year. We're in January, so I'm not going to try the air conditioner out, but I'd be kind of curious to see if it would turn on and run. Maybe you would need a soft start to start it up, but if it's about the same power as this fireplace, especially once the compressor is fired up and running, which I think the wattages are pretty close to the same, you could probably get about 2 hours of cooling out of that power station. All right, just for the heck of it, I turned on my converter, which would take care of charging my battery, and it probably kind of offsets all your 12 volt stuff as it's running too, so I have all the lights on in here right now. But let's just see, for the heck of it, how many watts the converter is using. So right now the RV is plugged in and it's got the converter on, and it's using about 143 watts, somewhere in there, and it just may depend on the state of battery charge and what else you might have running 12 volt wise inside your RV. But I could leave the converter on and also make that cup of coffee or use the microwave if I had to. So that was pretty enlightening. I definitely can see situations now where we could probably ditch the generator overall. If we have our external solar panels plus the solar panels up here on the roof, we could top this off in the daytime, and we got our 2000 watt boost when we want to do some coffee or we want to use the microwave or some other high wattage appliance. So let's go into pole barn now and see if we can tackle my high wattage appliances in there. Okay, let's try my chop saw here. I tried it a couple times and I did not have any sound for some reason on the video, so I'm going to do this one more time. But it worked in rehearsal. All right, the highest I seen it peak was 1350 watts, somewhere in there. And it seemed like it sounded normal when I used it just plugged into a regular outlet. Another box check. Pulling close to 1,000 watts there. Now, when I'm in here in the pole barn, I do not have Wi-Fi, and when I hooked this up and I went into my app, I couldn't see this power station. But if you press and hold this DC power button here for 3 seconds, what happens is you see a 4G icon up here, and then it takes about a minute or two for it to gather a signal. And if you see, I got 4 bars of 4G. So there is a SIM card in here. It's an electronic SIM, which is very unusual for a power station. I've never seen one that has something like this in there. But then when I went back into my app, I was able to control this power station, and it was coming over 4G. There's no cost to me to have the 4G. It also is helpful if you want to locate this. If it gets stolen, you can find this thing on a map somewhere and it'll show you the location of it. I've never seen on a power station. Kind of neat, especially if you're out in the boonies and you want to control this, like when I'm out hunting or something like that. It's pretty neat to know. And you can just monitor everything too. You can monitor the charge level. So if you're letting it charge for a day and you go out hunting, you can kind of keep track of how much charge this thing has. Just kind of pretty cool. So the next thing I would like to do is to be able to use a compressor in here. And again, it's just too many watts for the setup that I have. But now with this power station, I think we should be able to do it. Okay, so that was pulling somewhere around 1100 watts, and it had no problem running it. It sounds maybe a little different to me. Maybe it's just the aesthetics in here compared to my garage, but these are 110 outlets, not 120 outlets when you test them out here. So I don't know if the 110 gives it a little bit different sound of the compressor or not, but it seemed to work just fine. Well, I had no problem running the compressor. I had no problem with the shop vac, and no problem with my chop saw. So I think just about anything I do in here, unless I decide to take up arc welding, I should be okay. I will probably increase my solar panels. Maybe right now I only have 200 watts. I have some portable ones that I can add to make 400 watts. So I might make a 600 watt system out there once we do some projects this spring. This will be a nice little upgrade to take care of things in here. When we go on a road with the RV, it'll be perfect to take with us, especially when I make that cup of coffee, use the microwave, some other odds and ends. It's almost the size of my RV battery. It's just shy of about 500 watt hours, so it would almost be like doubling that size if we take this along with us. There's one other test that I want to complete, and that's just see if I could charge our car, and just for the heck of it, just see how many electric miles it would add to my wife's car. I'm thinking that something like this would probably, if it's in the summertime, it would probably give you 8 miles. Right now it's winter, so the electric efficiency is not as great as it is in the summertime. So I'm thinking maybe it would give us somewhere around 6 to 8, but let's try that out and see what happens. I'm going to quickly mention the rollers to help you transport it back and forth. So from my pole barn to the garage with the extended handle. Now checking the vehicle app, it shows that I have 13 miles of electric left on the battery. So I'm going to try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. I got my power station hooked up. I put a voltmeter and a watt meter on there to see exactly what the capacity of this battery is. I'm going to take it down to 0. And I'm also not going to waste that power. I'm going to charge my vehicle at the same time. To get this to work, I made my own neutral ground plug. I put it on there as one of the plugs. The charge adapters seem to accept it just fine. So right now we're charging the vehicle up. I don't anticipate me getting too many miles out of this. I started where I had 13 miles of battery left on the car, plugged it in. We'll see how many miles of battery we have left on the vehicle, and then we'll run this down to 0. I don't anticipate it's going to take too long. I'm thinking an hour and a half, and this battery will be spent. So I'll meet you back in an hour and a half. So I just finished depleting this battery completely. I got about 6 miles of electric miles gained on our plug-in hybrid. It looks like we used around 1,880 watts to put into the vehicle. And if you divide that by this capacity, 2,096, that's 90%. So you get 90% of the rated capacity of this power station, and that's pretty good. I will tell you that you probably should, to get a more accurate reading, this is the first time that I've discharged this battery all the way down to 0. I've charged it up when I got it from 0, but they say that you should probably do that twice to get the most accurate reading, and I didn't want to wait around to do that. So that's the readings that I got. I just thought I'd share that with you. A little unique to charge your vehicle, and like I said, if you have a nice solar array, you could charge it off the sun. So all in all, this is a great little unit. I'm really surprised. I enjoyed reviewing this and using it. I can't wait to use this in the RV when we take some trips later on this year, and then get my uses out of it in the pole barn. I think that's really going to help charge our e-bikes and use some of those high wattage appliances. Some folks say they like to have wireless charging on these things, and it's not a big deal to me because I could just take this charger, plug it into here, and now I have a wireless charger on the top. So that's not a big deal. All right, another thing I want to mention is this thing weighs around 46.5 pounds. So it is a little bit heavy, a little bit bulky, but you would expect that for the capacity and size, what type of batteries are in here. This has NMC batteries in here, 2,096 watt hours of storage, and they're good for around 3,000 cycles. After 3,000 cycles, they say that this has 60% capacity. If you're concerned about NMC batteries, they also make another model which is exactly like this, pretty much down to every single detail, except it's a little bit lighter. But that one has the lithium iron phosphate batteries in it, but that only has a capacity around 1,440 watt hours. But it'll double your cycles, so they say 6,000 cycles. To me, I'm thinking over using these over a period of time, 3,000 cycles is going to get me towards 10 years. And if I take care of this battery and I don't always charge it at that 1,800 watts and I don't always discharge it down to 0, I can make this thing last a good 10 years. So it also has a 2-year warranty, just in case you're worried about that. One thing I will say is that if anything, it's almost too pretty. This front case here, If I'm hauling this in my pickup truck, I'm definitely going to put some padding or some protection around it, or put a nice little blanket over it just to keep this thing looking nice. I just don't want to get it too beat up. But it's sturdy and rugged. I would just be concerned about getting the thing all scratched up. Now, one thing I noticed when I was charging with DC is that it seemed to double whatever I was putting into it. For example, I was charging with my power supply here at 87 watts. You see it on the right. But on the display it was showing 173, which is practically double. Same with my solar panels. I am actively talking with Vanpowers, and we're working on this, and it's probably just a simple firmware upgrade issue, type of a calibration type issue, so I'm not really concerned about it. It's only during the DC charging, and they're helping me out on it. So pretty cool. I'm very happy with the way things turned out. All my tests I was not disappointed in. A lot of neat things you could do with this. So I really enjoyed putting this thing through the ropes, and I can really see a lot of uses in the future for this thing. I appreciate everybody watching. Hope you enjoyed and subscribe to these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know when a new one is coming out. And keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.